welcome back to another video. And today, we obviously by the thumbnail and title of the video, we're going to be talking about Mega Man X6. This was the last 2D game in the series. Right after this, Mega Man X7 will be in 3D. So it was strange that Capcom would release this game during this time, because every game in the PS2 lineup was already heavily 3D'd. It was, you had Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, you had all these games that were like in 3D, and here comes Capcom releasing a 2D Mega Man game, which previously they've already released Mega Man Legends and Misadventures of Tron Bonne, which are in 3D. So it was definitely strange to see Capcom just go down the route of 3D and non-3D, and just keep that 2D aspect. It could have worked. I'm not saying that it couldn't have worked, but there were also other reasons, and that was Keiji Ifune actually left. He was no longer part of the Mega Man team or helping to make at least the Mega Man X games. He was actually moving over to his own to make Mega Man Zero, because he wanted to continue the story with Zero. But Capcom was like, nah, son, you may have killed Zero, but we kind of need him for another game. So the Capcom ran X6 without Keiji Ifune, and it kind of shows, especially the direct ending of Mega Man X6 is kind of weird, depending on which ending you get, because they didn't know what Mega Man Zero was going to be about. So it's kind of ironic to see how this plays through and our journey and experience, but we're going to really focus in this review on just Mega Man X6, and we're not going to really go on to the other games as much. Maybe X5, because the game does take place a few weeks after X5, or I would say like a month after X5. So you'll hear me sometimes talk about X5 because those two games are very close. So without further ado, let's just hop straight into the story. So at the ending of Mega Man X5, mainly the good ending, the space colony arc Eurasia falls to Earth. It's destroyed. It's partially destroyed, and pieces fell to Earth. And since this fight or basically the final fight between X and Zero and Sigma, the Sigma virus ended up getting spread through the debris when it landed on Earth, causing a lot of Reploids to go Maverick. This forced humans to go underground, and this is when we're introduced to the main antagonist, Gate. He is a scientist and a friend of Alia's, and he was in charge of investigating the crash, figuring out the pieces, just searching for lost Reploids. And he comes across it looks like a heart, but it looks like the heart of Zero, but he doesn't know what it is. And upon picking it up, it begins to affect him. And then this leads to even more Maverick attacks and the resurrection of his previous creations. And Alia ends up getting wind of this and ends up sending X to go investigate the Eurasia incident, or the Eurasia crash. So you end up fighting, I believe, a Reploid named D1000, and you end up running into other hunters as well, talking about how it's going berserk, and they tried to stop it, but they couldn't. And X is successfully able to take it out, and it's kind of weird because right after he takes it out, he sees a strange vision. He sees Zero come in, finish it off, and disappear, almost like a phantom. So X is perplexed on how Zero may be still alive, because at the ending of X5, Zero ends up dying with X to stop Sigma. So right after this, a Reploid comes down named Hymax, which he pretty much just overpowers X and tells him to just get lost. He's like, you don't have a stake in this fight, let me handle it. Let the big boys handle it. And then this leads into Isaac, who we'll talk about a little later when we start going over like the important characters of X6. But Isaac is another scientist who he knows a lot about the Zero nightmares. He knows a lot about the phenomenons that are going on, the nightmare phenomenon. And now he's like asking people to basically join in the fight. And he's asking people to basically put their lives on the line to go stop these mavericks who are going out of their way to destroy and, you know, ruin it for the humans, because as I said before, the humans are underground and they're trying to restore the surface so that humans can come back. But something's kind of off, and X points that out. He points out that there's something off about this. And if you look at Isaac, or however you say his name, you kind of notice like a familiar kind of look to him, but maybe not. You know, obviously it's not explained later, and I'll kind of get into that theory when I kind of talk on Isaac. But that's just like the basic rundown of the story, and then from there, everything starts going crazy. Now, as X, you have to go out of your way to stop these new mavericks who are, you know, taking over and putting up a lot of problems for X and the Maverick Hunters. So that just basically gives you the rundown of the story, and then, you know, you got to go through the standard Mega Man series of your 8 bosses, or 6, depending on which game, and just playing it out. So let's just talk about the basics of the characters. We're not going to go over every character. Like, obviously, we know X, we know Zero, we know Alia, we know Cygnus from previous game of Mega Man X6. So I'm not going to go over that, or Lifesaver. I'm not going to go over those characters. I'm just going to go over the characters that are important. So that's like Gate. Gate, as I said before, he's the main antagonist of the game. Wink, wink. If you know, you know. And he's a scientist, and he actually worked with Alia before. And he is corrupted by the Sigma virus and goes nuts and feels liberated, and he wants to basically stop trying to restore the surface for humans, and wants Reploids to reign free and have a utopia for Reploids. So he's basically just, you know, the crazy guy that just goes nuts. And he basically spends a lot of time just trying to be a thorn and X and Zero's back. And we'll kind of get to Zero in a second, because we talked about how Zero died, so we'll get to that in a second. He also created majority of the Reploid / Mavericks you fight through the game, if not all of them. And they all have like their weird tragic backstory. I'm going to go over them individually and their stages. I'm going to talk about the stage and them together. I'm not going to split it, because I think that would make the video way too long and mad boring. No one wants to sit here and listen to me yap about, you know, each individual character. So we're going to talk about the character and stage as a combination, as one. So the next character I think is really important is Hymax. He has a pretty short story. He's created by Gate with Zero's DNA, so that kind of explains why he's super OP. And his whole objective is basically just hunting Nightmare Zeros and just bringing a stop to it. You can beat him. Contrary to belief, you can beat him, and you get a special interaction with Isaac, because he's created by Gate but works for Isaac. So you get a special interaction, and I'll kind of go over that interaction later with Isaac. But yeah, it's really cool. And another character that is kind of strange to be here is Dynamo. Dynamo shows up. Now, like I said before, it's normal because he was in the events of Mega Man X6. I mean, not X6, X5. I keep saying X6. But X5, he was one of the antagonists in X5. He was hired by Sigma to stop, or actually to spread, the Sigma virus. So it's not far-fetched on why he's here, because it's directly after the events of Mega Man X5, like I said, a month later, essentially. And it's strange, but it makes sense. So basically, to fight him, you have to get a high rank, and within that high rank, you get more souls from, like, you know, to level up your character, because you get souls in this game from the Nightmare, and it makes you stronger. So he's just basically like a bonus boss, if that makes sense, since he was technically would be there. So yeah, it's a strange addition to have Dynamo in the game, but it's not. And he does interact with him. It's not like he's just a cameo, shows up. He actually interacts with X and Zero, has dialogue for X and dialogue for Zero. And last but not least, like I said before, Isaac. Isaac is definitely a strange character. He looks like Dr. Wily. It's never said that he is Dr. Wily. He's just another scientist who's tasked with finding more information about the nightmares, because during this time, even though in my opinion 3 weeks is not enough time to declare peace or that there's nothing going on, especially after a ginormous space colony just crash landed into Earth spreading a virus. Yeah, I don't think it's a little too early to call peace, but he's tasked with the viruses and figuring out the nightmare phenomenon and all that fun stuff. But he also works on the side. And like I said earlier, with the Zero and X interaction with Hymax, if you beat Hymax with them before the final fight, you have a special interaction with Isaac where he can have one or two things. He can either be really infuriated that X and Zero have thwarted his plans, and then he decides to, you know, attack them, or he escapes, like he runs away. But that's pretty much it when it comes to the, I guess you could say, the main characters, or not really main characters, but the major characters of X6. And now we're going to be talking about stages and their Mavericks. When it comes to Mega Man X6, their stages are pretty weird. I think the main focus is the Mavericks more than the stages themselves. I wouldn't say the stages are forgettable. I think a lot of the designs of stages, like Commander Yamrick stage, really good looking stage. But then if you have Blaze Heatnik stages, it's like, it just looks like the same backdrop. So like, you know, that kind of consistency. Or Wolfang, it's just one icy tundra. It makes sense, but they didn't try to like make it stand out apparently. But most of the characters in their stages, the characters themselves have their reasons on why they may not like humans or other Reploids. If I would say about like 90% of the Mavericks are resurrected by Gate, and for each reason. So we're going to start with Commander Yamrick stage. I think Commander Yamrick stage is really good. It's called the Amazonian Jungle, or Amazon area, I believe it's called. And it's really nice. It basically is your basic run down of the mill, you know, grassy tundra. It's nothing too crazy. You have spikes that you have the leap of faith where there's like spikes under you, but if you jump correctly, you'll be able to land without dying. You have these little slugs that you can stand on that if hit will retract, and you know, you lose a platform and basically either fall into spikes to your death, or you know, other things as well. So when it comes to Commander Yamrick stage, it's pretty basic. But when it comes to Commander Yamrick's life, I guess you can say, before the resurrection, he was a indigenous or a archaeological observer, ecological observer, and he helped protect wildlife. He was in charge of basically keeping wildlife protected and loved and cared for. So one day while he was on his route, part of the forest caught on fire, and he was able to pull it out. He was able to put it out, he was able to stop it, but what ended up happening is his reputation kind of hit the fan. And though he wasn't blamed for the actions or the fire itself, because he was able to put it out, it still kind of bothered him. But later on, Gates, I guess you can say opposers who didn't like him, end up messing with Commander Yamrick's flight patterns. So instead of him being able to correctly fly, he ended up flying crashing into his death. So he was sabotaged because they didn't like Gate and his creations. And this is going to be like a reoccurring thing throughout the story of Mega Man X6, or at least with the Mavericks that you fight in their stages, is that a lot of them were betrayed by the government and other scientists as well. And they all have their reasons on why they hate them. So that's Commander Yamrick stage. It's actually my favorite stage in the game. And then we're going to actually go to my second favorite stage, is Rainy Turtaloids, or the Inami Temple. The Inami Temple is your basic old style Japanese looking temple. It's meant to be a safe haven for humans, but what ended up happening is that their acid rain started falling from the sky, preventing humans from being able to live there. Also too, it was supposed to have a lot of relics of the human past, and they were trying to preserve it, and obviously acid rain is not going to allow you to preserve that. So throughout the stage, you're dealing with acid rain, bad vision, and you have to be able to like destroy these weather machines that are causing the acid rain. And they have these little eyeballs, I call them. I don't know exactly what they're called, but they're like little eyeballs, and you have to destroy them to destroy the field around the generator. And that's just pretty much the stage, and you fight Rainy Turtaloid. Rainy Turtaloid is such a great character, and I like his story too, because it's so strange but cool at the same time. And what happens is Gate creates him to withstand that acid rain, so he creates his shell to be basically indestructible, and no attack can get through it. But the government hears that and goes, nah, we don't like homie being indestructible. Can you make him destructible at some point? And Gate was like, no, I don't want to make him. His purpose is to be able to travel through that. So if he's destructible, that kind of doesn't make sense. And the government goes, nah, son, we're going to need you to get rid of him then. So Rainy Turtleoid ends up feeling guilty because Gate ends up getting punished due to the fact that he won't destroy Rainy Turtleoid. So Rainy Turtleoid feels bad and goes, I guess I'm just going to commit seppuku. And he does. He just ends his own life out of guilt that he is causing his master issues. And that's kind of talked about when you play with X. I'll let you guys like read the dialogue when you guys play the game, because it is a really cool dialogue exchange, especially between him and Zero. I do think that's going to be majorly important. Next stage we're going to be talking about is Shield Sheldon stage. Another like, I want to point something out. Playing these games like for this review actually got me to read a lot of this. Mind you, I've been playing this game since I was like 10, like since I was a kid, and it's really cool to see like the stuff I was actually missing out on because I was too busy mashing or just hitting the skip button because I just wanted to get that high octane action. So there's actually a story here, but not to go too far off topic. But the Laser Institute is where Shield Sheldon is found, and you basically it's in the name. You're dealing with lasers, invisible, platforms that you have to jump across and find, and get your other Reploids that are there and save them. And we'll talk about that when we get to the mechanics. But it's really interesting to see how these characters interact. So Shield Sheldon's story is that he was a bodyguard. He was created to be a bodyguard, but end up having to kill the person he was essentially bodyguarding. And what ended up happening was they went Maverick, and their name was Dr. Jim. Funny name, Dr. Jim. So Dr. Jim was a actual, scientist of lasering. I don't know how to explain that, but he was a doctor of lasering. But he ended up going Maverick, and Shield Sheldon had to put him down. And as he put him down, Maverick hunters came in and saw him over the body, and they were like, oh, Maverick. So he couldn't live with the shot to his reputation, because obviously he won't be able to bodyguard other people if they think he's a Maverick. So he ended up taking his own life because he felt like he couldn't protect anybody, nor could he ever work again. So that's Shield Sheldon. And my least favorite, I think it kind of starts falling apart here when it comes to characters, but then you have characters like Infinity Maginian. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Infinity Maginian. I'm just kind of breeze through a lot of these. So he's from the Weapon Center, and basically that's it. He's just a Reploid created to handle big boy weapons, and it gets to his head, and he ends up, having to be put down or decommissioned because everyone didn't like working with him. He was not following protocol. He was just doing whatever he felt like it, and his arrogance got ahead of him. And his stage is just called the Weapon Center, and you deal with this ginormous robot called the Lumani. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the Lumani. And it just basically tracks you through the first part of the stage until you destroy its like little power cores. And then once you destroy its power cores, it's pretty much GG's. You don't have to worry about that for the second half of the game. And that's pretty much it for Virginia. Ground Scaravich. Ground Scaravich is in the Central Museum. And his stage is you have to destroy 3 totems, and each totem leads you to a subsection of the stage. So if you destroy the first totem, it leads you to one part of the stage. You have to go through like a puzzle is what I would call it, or like a little mini game, and then you destroy the little power piece at the end. You come back, destroy the totem, and you do that three times, and then you just fight Ground Scaravich. And that's pretty much it. Then Blizzard Wolfang, I think, is okay of a story too. He gets the North Pole area, which is basically just a nice stage. I'm not even gonna sit here and just try to hook you with something crazy. It's just basically a nice stage. And yeah, he just ends up getting betrayed by Gate because his team, when he took them to the North Pole, ended up getting attacked by a Maverick. He end up being blamed for it. And Alia actually had a relationship with him because he ended up being put away due to Alia's ignorance. She didn't know that he was being framed. She just thought that he was a Maverick and ended up banishing him into the North Pole by throwing him into the sea. Fun fact, Blizzard Wolfang and Zero are actually good friends. They actually were friends before this and way before the events of X6. So it's cool to see if you play with Zero and fight against the Wolfang, they actually have a conversation about that. Then we have 2 more left, and I'm just going to breeze past them again. It's going to be Blaze Heatnix. It's just your regular lava stage. There's really nothing here. He was tasked with being a rescuer in high, volume areas. He was really good at his job, and it kind of got to his head. And after it got to his head, he was starting to leave people to die for some strange reason, instead of helping them, which was his main priority. So they end up putting him down due to that. And his stage is just, you have to fight these ginormous robots that are stupidly annoying. They're called Nightmare Snakes, and they are stupidly annoying to fight because you have to fight it like 3 or 4 times, I believe. And it's stupidly annoying. And last but not least, we have Metal Shark Player. He was basically another scientist that was in charge of a trash compactor. And he took the DNA of old Reploids to create new Reploids. He was really interested in their DNA and got to understand them a lot more. Because in the world of Mega Man, basically Reploids are basically people. These are people. These are not just like how we see today, like iRobot. No, these are actual, basically people. They're not people in the sense of blood and flesh, but they have DNA, they have identifying markers just as we do. So Metal Shark Player was in that. And his stage is the Recycle Lab, which you spend like 2 seconds in the right armor, and then you have to basically just not get crushed to death. That's the whole stage. Just don't get crushed. And then that's pretty much it for the stages. Once you complete them, you get access to the final stage, and you cook. You do your thing. But we're actually going to be talking about another quick aspect of the game. Obviously, if you play Mega Man games, you know, and that's the armors. The blade armor basically just turns X into an expert with the Z Saber. The parts that he gets, the body part, the head part, the arm part, and the foot part help give him, advantages. He gets this Giga Attack where he slashes like really quickly that causes like sound waves to go through. So he gets a multi-directional dash from the boots of the and that's pretty much it. And then you have the Shadow Armor, which is basically like end game armor that makes the game easy. I'm not going to talk about the Ultimate Armor or the Black Armor for Zero because they're just end game codes, so they really don't change much besides just making the game easier for you. And now we're just going to be focusing on the mechanics of the game really quickly. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. The game does a decent job of explaining it, and that's the nightmare phenomenons that you see throughout the game. So the nightmare phenomenons are basically like only affect Reploids, and they can't do anything about it because they can only see them. They can only react to what they're seeing. So a lot of what you're seeing X and Zero go through when they play in the stages are actually in their head. It's not really reality. Obviously, we're interacting with it in the game, but it's not real reality. And that kind of throws it off a little bit for me. I think it's kind of whack because it gives birth to the little squiggly things you see, which are like nightmare souls, and killing them allows you to get these souls. And the more souls you collect with each character with X and Zero allows you to open up more, I guess, abilities and things of that nature, because you get the ability to equip abilities. So the better your score or the amount you have opens up more slots. So that allows you to add more pieces you get from, and now that kind of ties into the Reploids that you find around. So since I said earlier when we were talking about how Isaac asks Reploids to go around to quote-unquote help save people, yeah, those Reploids were getting folded because they didn't know what they were doing. So it was our task as well to save the ones who were stranded, who needed help, and they give you armor pieces and stuff like that, and that kind of is a good thing. I think that's a really good way to tie into the story on why there's random Reploids around. But one thing I hate is the fact that the nightmare squiggly things, yeah, if you don't kill them fast enough, they actually attach themselves to those Reploids and they delete their data. So you can't even get, if you destroy that, you can't get it again. Once they take it over, that sucks, because unfortunately, if they end up grabbing one that has a ability, you're fucked out of that ability for the rest of the game. You cannot restart. I mean, you can technically restart to your last save, but then you have to do the entire stage over and run the risk of it happening again. And trust me, you're probably not going to want to do that. And yeah, it's your standard variety game. I'm going to talk about, since we're talking about nightmares, you have Nightmare Zero. So this is the only way to unlock Zero. You have to go through an alternate path of any stage, and the alternate paths, I didn't talk about them in this video because I don't really think it's that important. It's kind of just there. It's right in front of your face, so it's not really something you'll miss. But it's just basically a secondary path. It's like going down a warp pipe in Mario. But you end up fighting a different boss if you go the secondary path. And if you go through it for the first time, I believe you fight High Max and then Zero, but I might be wrong on that. You fight Zero. Once you defeat Nightmare Zero, he becomes unlockable. And you know, it's really weird. So then that leads to the end of the game. If you beat it with X or Zero, it's completely different depending on how you want to look at it. And that's pretty much it. The Nightmare Phenomenon just adds weird stuff to the stage. It lets you know by showing on the stage selection screen that like a red square, not red square, but a red hexagon, I can't speak, red hexagon, and that lets you know that there's a Nightmare Phenomena. So it might be like the blinding lights, or it might be like these orbs that run around and fight you, or you know, Mega Man or Zero shadows flying around the stage hitting you. So it's stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. There's not really anything home to write about. These kind of can be ignored. They're not really important to the game or function of the game. They're just kind of there to make sure that the game doesn't feel stagnated. And last but not least, I'm going to just talk about the sound design of the game. I think the sound design of the game is phenomenal opposed to the rest of the game, and we'll talk about that in the conclusion. But yeah, the sound design is really cool. I really enjoy the sounds design, and I'll actually let you listen to a few of my favorite hits from the X6 game, and here you go. Yeah, like the sound design in this game is really good. I do think they cooked very well with the sound design of the game instead of focusing on just the gameplay and things of that nature, because it's your standard gameplay, so the music always has to kind of stand out, and I do think X6's music, stands out really well. And yeah, in conclusion, I do think X6 is a bad game. It is definitely a bad game. It was a rough play, for sure. This might be actually the first rough play series where I kind of just do game series of like, oh man, like it's fun to play, but like I don't think I would ever keep coming back to play it. I don't think I'm gonna ever sit down and say, yeah, this is the game for me. But it does have a special place in my heart because I am a Mega Man fan, and I definitely sat down with a lot of time just grinding these games out, knowing exactly where every armor piece, every upgrade, because I just, you know, I was a kid, didn't have a memory card, so I learned to beat Mega Man games, especially the X games, in a day. So it was definitely a strange thing coming back as an adult, experiencing again with the mindset of, how do I tell people how to play this game? And I don't want to tell you how to play the game, but I want you to experience it. I think there's plenty enough videos around for you to understand X6 and its dynamic. But I want to leave you guys with this. This is I say 5.5. You know, it's a decent Mega Man game. It's not really like overly ass or overly good. It's just meh. Like, I'll play it every once in a while kind of move. But with that, I'll leave you with this. Make sure you play games because you want to enjoy the game. Even though I might say this game is booty butt cheeks, you might enjoy the game. You might learn on why this game is fun for you, and that's the whole point of my channel, is for you to enjoy the game, you to sit down and play it. There's so many games coming out, and I don't think as a gamer we'll ever hit the end of our backlog, but try. And that's my whole thing. Maybe you have the Mega Man X collection. Maybe you have the Mega Man ZX collection. Maybe you have the Mega Man Star Force collection, and just go play them. Take a minute, go play it, go get your Steam Deck, go get your Iron Neo, and just go play the game. So with that, I'd like to leave you with this. Stay in my X's. Peace.